Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. And today we are going to be talking about deck loadout in Nier Reincarnation. We're also going to be talking about individual unit loadout and what I found to be the most effective way in conquering higher tier force missions with my units. Let's go ahead and dig in. So the first thing that I found, which was super useful for me, was making a different composition element team for every single element. So you can see I have wind, dark, I have my automata team, I have a water team, a fire team, a light team. Doing this is just going to save you so much time, because when you start getting to the point where you're farming hard missions, where you're farming, different types of events, every event has basically an element that you're going to want to bring into it, and you can just switch to your team. You're not going to have to fidget around with equipment and adjust things that way. Also, if you didn't know, there is a deck list function where you can copy your decks to other decks. I found this out probably when I was already starting the very hard section of my game, which was mind-blowing to me. So, just so you know, that exists. Let's talk about individual character build, because I think when you're building for elements and when you're building for kind of things that you want to be successful in, or like a difficult mission, you do want to think about element, and then you also want to think about secondary weapons and your companion. Now, in terms of weapons, you do always want to use a weapon that is, one, the element that you have an advantage of going into this map, and two, you want to make sure that it is your main type of weapon for the character, particularly if you have different passives unlocked on your character abilities, right? If they're higher level, that individual weapon type is going to make a bigger difference. Like maybe it'll be a longsword on a longsword character where the character is focused on critical hit rate. If you're like me, I was literally putting two-handed weapons on 2P, and I was like, all right, we got this. And then I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So one, make sure you're putting the right type of weapon on each character, and make sure that the element attribute is correct. Two, I think companions are not, like, people don't put companions as like a high tier thing when you're going into elemental missions, but probably, I would argue, going into elemental missions, companions are one of your most important buffs. And I'll show you why here. This little companion, which everybody has access to, Sayuri, does have the companion ability Void Shutdown, which if you're going up against a dark element enemy, all of your dark damage is going to be reduced by 10%, and you can level this up. Now, that is substantial, right? If you're trying to push into top tier content, that type of a ability, and if you're trying to run specifically elemental missions, adjusting your companion so that you have the right elemental shield and the right elemental buff, right? Because there's also a side of this where you have companions that buff a specific element where they're like, yeah, fire element units are doing 10% more damage, right? You need to make sure you have the right type of companion on your party for the elemental party that you're setting up. It's quite possible that a level 1 companion is going to do more for you than a level like 15 companion, because this companion, right, would reduce 10% of dark damage. Well, I might have a level 15 companion that reduces 20% of water damage going up against dark units. It's going to do nothing for me except apply base stats. So keeping in mind what your companion does is also really important. So you also get companions by pushing into very hard. So I would suggest you guys go and push that. And then I'm going to move my webcam here real quick, because there is also an auto feature here, which I didn't know about. And so if you are wanting to just build up a specific element auto team, you can always hit that. When we're in the character screen though, I would encourage all of you not to hit the auto function, because it's going to jack up your memoirs. It will actually prioritize the highest offensive capability for your memoirs, and almost always you want to make sure that your memoirs have the large set bonus, right? Because a lot of times what you'll see if you hit auto is it's just going to put 2 on here, and then it's not going to put the second one on there, and then you're just like, what are you doing? And it goes like a little like bonkers. Now, in terms of secondary weapons, we're hearing a lot about secondary weapons right now, and we're hearing a lot about how the passives of secondary weapons might not, or they might contribute. From my testing and from my limited testing, the passives of the secondary weapons do contribute, and they will show up depending on the percentage level buff of the buff that's applied. Now, we're still in the process of testing this, but what we have found is that, for example, timed vigor does show up and does multiply if you put multiple timed vigor secondary weapons on a character, but you have to have that timed vigor at a certain level for it to show up on the character buff. So that's definitive proof for me that secondary weapon passives do actually transfer to the character, besides just the stats of the weapon. But for me right now, I'm just like, okay, take it one step at a time. Let's just keep going and keep experimenting and try and figure out the best way to do this. Now, one thing I'm also experimenting with and looking at in terms of deck loadout is going to be the weapons and the weapons that I have leveled. And you can see here that I'm a little bit all across the board. And I think there is kind of a philosophy to build tall when you are playing Nier right now. And I think that might be right for like some specific weapons for characters, right? But I think it's important to have a diverse range of weapons leveled, because if you are, for example, going into a light element mission and you need a dark element weapon, you know, the difference between putting a level 1 dark element weapon versus a level 30 dark element weapon could be the difference in stats, right, that like makes you survive the mission. So it doesn't take much to level weapons to like 35 to 38 to 40. And if you're using those varieties of elemental builds and elemental strategies like I am, you will probably just find the best advantage is leveling multiple weapons, right, to level 30 for elements. So you can see here I have all of the different elemental weapons. They're all leveled so that I can kind of throw them in and use them. And then up here you can see some of my primary weapons, my primary 4-star weapons. I am starting to work on maxing these out. And these are the weapons that I'm going to send, that I'm going to put as my secondary weapons, because they're going to have the most stats that will go into my secondary weapons, and they're going to have, you know, evolved or ascended secondary passives, which I haven't tested if the secondary passive of the weapons, if they're set as secondary weapons, will contribute, but I'm thinking they might. So I am in the process of ascending and evolving some weapons to try and put them in those secondary slots to test right now. I hope this helps some of you guys who might be struggling with the harder content out there. I personally have found that making the shift to elemental basically setups and equipment has been like mind-bogglingly like power enhancing on my characters, and like it makes the entire difference in terms of being able to run through a mission quickly and easily, and between like struggling and dying, and you know, of course, unless the enemy is casting blind, in which case you're just fucked anyway because blind is way too overpowered. But that's about all that I have for you guys. Hopefully this video was informative and helpful. I am playing a lot of Nier Reincarnation right now, and I'm trying to kind of get caught up in terms of all of the knowledge, all of the gameplay. So what I really don't want to do is like try and say anything is definitive right now. I just want to talk about what's working for me. If you guys do want to talk more about Nier, get more information on Nier, we do have Luna, or Level Editors as they're known in by Discord, who is setting up a webpage dedicated to Nier and has so many great resources in our Discord. I would encourage you all to come and hang out there. I am streaming this game almost every night. I'm taking tonight off because I've been streaming it the last like 3 days nonstop, but definitely think, reflect, and leave comments on what type of content you would like to see more of. Content that I really want to do going forward, I really want to talk about individual units and like good builds for them. I want to talk about, you know, the farming methods and what to farm next. That's probably going to be my next video, probably coming out tomorrow, is I want to talk about the best way to increase your force and the efficient way to increase your force. So we'll probably be doing that a little bit next. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.